Corinne Whitfield loved her neighborhood. It was her domain, her little slice of perfection where everything and everyone was in their proper place. Corinne was a woman in her mid-40s, fair-skinned with meticulously styled blonde hair and flawless makeup. Her days were a predictable routine of morning jogs along tree-lined streets, followed by breakfast at her favorite cafe and afternoons spent planning community events. She thrived on order and structure, believing it was her responsibility to maintain the neighborhood's standards. But one day, her perfect world was disrupted. A new neighbor moved in next door, and from the moment she saw him, something felt off. He was a black man, around 50 years old, dressed casually in jeans and a plain shirt. His presence was a stark contrast to the polished professionals Corinne was used to seeing. He greeted the movers with a friendly smile, even helping carry boxes into the house. Corinne watched from her window, her smile fading. He didn't fit the image of the ideal neighbor she had in her mind. Over the next few days, Corinne became more uneasy. This man, whose name she didn't know, frequently had visitors, people of all ages, from teenagers to elderly folks, coming and going at all hours. They would gather on his porch, laughing and chatting as if they'd known each other for years. Corinne couldn't understand what was drawing so many people to his house. It wasn't typical for her neighborhood, and she began to suspect something was wrong. One Sunday afternoon, Corinne decided to take a closer look. She took her coffee and strolled past his house, pretending to be on her phone. As she got closer, she overheard snippets of cheerful conversations. The man was laughing, joking with a group of young people sitting on his porch. He spoke with ease and warmth, making everyone feel welcome. But to Corinne, his friendliness seemed forced, like a facade hiding something sinister. Returning home, her discomfort grew into suspicion. She paced her living room, glancing out the window at her neighbor's house. What was he up to? Why were so many different people visiting him? Her anxiety spiraled until she made a decision: she needed to call the police. With a shaking hand, she picked up the phone and dialed. "Hello, I'd like to report a suspicious person in my neighborhood," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "He doesn't fit in here, and I feel unsafe." Within minutes, a patrol car arrived, its flashing lights casting red and blue shadows across the quiet street. Corinne watched from her window, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction. The officers approached her neighbor's house, their expressions serious. He was still sitting on the porch, unaware of the unfolding situation. His laughter with his guests slowly faded as they noticed the police officers. The mood shifted from relaxed to tense. The young people on the porch exchanged worried looks, while Corinne's neighbor, calm but visibly confused, stood up. One of the officers spoke first, requesting his identification. Corinne held her breath as he reached into his pocket and handed over his ID. He spoke calmly, explaining who he was and introducing his guests. His words floated through the air, reaching Corinne as fragments carried by the breeze. The officer examining the ID suddenly changed his expression. He glanced at his partner, whispering something. Both officers took a step back, their demeanor shifting from suspicion to respect. They returned the ID with a polite nod, offering a few words Corinne couldn't quite hear. Her neighbor smiled, nodded in return, and resumed his conversation with his guests as if nothing had happened. The officers walked back to their car without further questioning, leaving Corinne standing at her window in stunned silence. Her satisfaction turned into confusion. Why had the officers left so quickly? What had she missed? The next morning, Corinne overheard whispers at the cafe. Neighbors were talking about the incident, sharing bits and pieces of shocking news. "Did you hear? He's not just anyone, he's the director of the FBI," one woman said, her voice low but filled with excitement. Corinne's heart skipped a beat. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Her new neighbor was the director of the FBI, in charge of investigating corruption and discrimination within law enforcement. He was in the neighborhood undercover, assessing the local police department. Her call to the police hadn't exposed any wrongdoing by him, it had exposed her own prejudice. Corinne felt a wave of nausea. Her hands trembled as she made her way home, her mind racing. What had she done? Her actions could have severe consequences, not just for her reputation, but possibly for her safety as well. She had misjudged him completely, driven by her own unfounded fears. That evening, there was a knock on Corinne's door. Her neighbor stood there, calm and composed. Corinne forced a weak smile, hiding the fear and shame swirling inside her. "Hi, Corinne," he began, his voice gentle yet firm. "I wanted to talk about what happened yesterday. I know you called the police. I understand why you might have felt uneasy, but we need to discuss the impact of such actions." Corinne's face flushed with embarrassment. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Quick judgments like that can lead to unnecessary conflict," he continued. "We all want a safe community, but safety starts with understanding each other, not with suspicion." He wasn't angry, but the disappointment in his eyes was unmistakable. It pierced through Corinne's defenses, leaving her feeling exposed and ashamed. She nodded, unable to meet his gaze. The next day, Corinne woke up feeling different. The familiar comfort of her old routines was gone, replaced by a nagging sense of guilt. Determined to change, she attended the next community meeting with a new mindset. Instead of her usual complaints about the neighborhood, she proposed an event, a community picnic to bring everyone together. "It's time we get to know our neighbors better," she said, surprising even herself. The idea was well received. Corinne threw herself into planning the event, arranging activities, food, and games that encouraged people to interact. On the day of the picnic, the park buzzed with laughter and friendly chatter. Corinne noticed her neighbor standing nearby, watching her with a slight smile. He approached her, extending his hand. "You've done a great job, Corinne. It's a good start," he said warmly. "Thank you," Corinne replied, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. "I realize now how wrong I was. I'm glad we could move forward." That evening, they shared a meal together, talking not just about the neighborhood, but about life, values, and the importance of kindness. For the first time in years, Corinne felt a genuine connection with someone different from herself. It was a small but significant step towards a new way of seeing the world. As the night ended, she realized her surroundings felt brighter, more vibrant. The change she feared had become the change she needed. And in that realization, she found a new kind of peace. Thank you for watching this story on Unfolded Tales Explained. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our next thought-provoking tale. See you in the next episode.